She jumped in front of the Alpha King's arrow, woke in his bed with his bite mark on her neck. Chapter 1. The arrow that changed everything. Forest had no mercy for the wounded. Alara knew this as she stumbled through the underbrush, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her borrowed cloak catching on thorns that seemed to reach for her deliberately. 3 days ago, she'd had a name that mattered in the capital. 3 days ago, she'd been someone's fiancé, someone's investment, someone's carefully constructed lie. Now she was nothing but running feet and a racing heart. The arrow came from nowhere. One moment she was pushing through a curtain of hanging moss. The next she heard the whistle of fletching cutting air. Instinct made her dive sideways, but the forest floor betrayed her. Her foot caught on an exposed root, and she pitched forward, directly into the arrow's path, except the arrow never reached her. A figure materialized between her and death, tall, impossibly fast, dressed in black that seemed woven from shadow itself. The arrow struck him square in the chest with a sound like meat on a butcher's block. He didn't fall, didn't even stagger. He caught her before she hit the ground. Foolish, he said, his voice like wind sliding over stone. To run alone, at night, in these woods. Alara's vision swam. Up close, he was beautiful in a way that made her chest tight, sharp features that looked carved rather than born, pale skin that seemed to drink in the moonlight, and eyes that reflected silver like a wolf's. The arrow protruded from his chest, dark blood blooming around the shaft. You're hurt, she gasped. I've had worse. He pulled the arrow free with his bare hand, barely wincing. The wound beneath his torn shirt was already closing, flesh knitting together as she watched. You, however, will die if you stay here. I can't go back. I didn't say go back. His grip on her arm tightened. I said you'll die. Those weren't random hunters. That was a challenge arrow, marked with house-driven seal. His eyes narrowed as shouts echoed through the trees behind them. They're hunting me. You just became collateral. More arrows hissed through the canopy. He moved her behind him with inhuman speed, his body a shield she hadn't asked for. 3 more shafts struck him shoulder, thigh, back. He broke them off like kindling. Can you run? He demanded. I've been running for 3 days. Then run faster. He swept her up as if she weighed nothing, one arm beneath her knees, the other around her shoulders. Hold tight. Don't scream. And for God's sake, don't look down. He ran. The world became a blur of shadow and silver. Trees whipped past. The ground disappeared. Alara realized with creeping horror that he was leaping bounds of 20-30 feet that no human could manage. The wind tore at her hair. She buried her face against his chest, and felt the wrongness immediately. In a heartbeat, his chest was still and silent as a grave. What are you? She whispered. Something you should fear. His voice rumbled against her ear. But tonight, something that will keep you alive. They burst from the forest into a clearing dominated by a structure that stole Alara's remaining breath. It wasn't a house. It was a manor carved from black stone, all Gothic spires and narrow windows that watched like eyes. Gargoyles perched on the corners of the roof, their expressions frozen in eternal screams. He carried her up the steps and through doors that opened at his approach, then set her down in an entrance hall lit by candles that couldn't have been lit by human hands. They floated in midair, their flames an unsettling blue. We're safe, he interrupted. For now. He moved to a window and peered through the heavy curtains. Blood still seeped from the wounds he hadn't bothered to remove the arrows from. House Dreven won't attack here. Not directly. Too many old treaties, too much risk. Alara's legs finally gave out. She sank onto a bench carved from what looked like a single piece of obsidian, her hands shaking violently. I don't understand any of this. You don't need to understand. You need to rest. He turned to face her fully, and in the candlelight she saw the blood on his clothes, the way his skin had gone even paler, the slight tremor in his hands. My name is Kieran Ashford. I am the last of House Ashford, bound by laws you've never heard of, hunted by enemies who will kill you simply for being near me. His silver eyes held hers. And you just jumped in front of an arrow meant for my heart. I didn't jump. I fell. The result is the same. He moved closer, each step precise and controlled. You saved my life, however, accidentally. By the old laws, I now owe you a blood debt, which means you're under my protection until that debt is satisfied. I don't want what you want is irrelevant. His voice went soft, dangerous. House Dreven saw you. They know your face. If you leave here, they'll hunt you down and drain you dry, just to send me a message. He crouched before her, bringing them eye to eye. So here is your choice, little rabbit. Stay in this house as my guest and live, or walk out that door and die screaming before dawn. Alara looked into his inhuman eyes and saw something flicker. There's something ancient and tired and desperately alone. What are you? She asked again. This time he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. What do you think I am? She looked at his bloodless wounds, his absent heartbeat, the way shadows seemed to cling to him like silk. Vampire? She whispered. Finally, Kieran said, an honest word. Chapter 2. The price of Sanctuary House breathed around her. Alara had never believed buildings could be alive, but Kieran's manner proved her wrong. Shadows shifted in corners where no one walked. Distant doors opened and closed with no visible hands. The floating candles drifted through halls like lazy fireflies, their blue flames casting everything in shades of midnight and ash. She sat in what Kieran called the West Parlor, a room dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows currently hidden behind heavy velvet curtains. He'd disappeared 20 minutes ago, muttering something about securing the perimeter, leaving her alone, with her racing thoughts and the growing certainty that she'd traded one nightmare for another. It leased her. Former fiancé had been predictably cruel. This, whatever this was, defied every rule she'd ever learned. You're still here. Alara jumped. Kieran stood in the doorway, changed into fresh clothes, black, always black, with his silver hair tied back. The wounds were completely gone now, not even scars remaining. He carried a tray bearing a teapot and cup. Where else would I go? She tried to keep the tremor from her voice. You made the alternative quite clear. I made it honest. He set the tray on the low table before her. The tea is chamomile, human safe. I had the house prepare it. The house, it's spelled to respond to the master's needs. Old magic, bound into the foundations. He poured with hands that were suddenly and settlingly steady. Drink. You're in shock, and shock kills as efficiently as any blade. Alara wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for its warmth. You said you're the last of House Ashford. What happened to the others? Kieran's expression went carefully blank. They died 60 years ago. House Dreven saw to that. 60. She nearly dropped the cup. How old are you? 234 this winter. He settled into the chair across from her with preternatural grace. Though I was turned at 28, so I suppose technically I've been 28 for centuries. The mathematics become tedious. She stared at him, searching for signs of madness in his eyes. Found only cold, patient truth. I've read stories, she said slowly, about vampires, monsters who drink blood and fear the sun. The stories are children's tales wrapped around cores of fact. Kieran leaned back, studying her with the same intensity she'd give a puzzle. Yes, we drink blood. No, we don't fear the sun, we simply burn in it, painfully, fatally, if exposed long enough. He gestured to the curtained windows. Hence the precautions, and the blood. Do you? She couldn't finish. Kill to feed? His smile was bitter. Some do. I don't. Haven't for a century. He pulled a small glass vial from his pocket, dark liquid that looked black in the candlelight. Preserved blood. Taken with consent from willing donors, paid handsomely for their trouble. House Ashford has always held to the old codes. Blood freely given, never stolen. Life preserved, never destroyed. But House Dreven follows no codes but power and hunger. His fingers tightened on the vial. They're why the treaties exist. Why vampire houses must register their territories, limit their numbers, swear oaths to leave human populations unmolested. They broke those oaths 60 years ago when they slaughtered my family for refusing to join their expansion. Alara's tea had gone cold. She set it aside. Why didn't the other houses stop them? Because vampires are, at our core, pragmatists. House Dreven became too powerful to challenge directly. So the other houses made their treaties, carved up the territories, and pretended House Ashford had simply faded away. His eyes found hers. Except I survived, escaped, rebuilt in secret. And Dreven has been hunting me ever since, because I'm proof of their crimes. Evidence that could shatter their legitimacy. That's why they shot at you in the forest. That was Lord Cassius, Dreven's eldest son. He makes a sport of it, hunting me when I venture beyond my wards. Kieran's voice went soft, dangerous. Usually I'm fast enough. Tonight I was distracted. By what? By you. He stood abruptly, moving to the curtained windows. I heard you running through the woods 3 days ago. Tracked your progress. Listened to you cry when you thought you were alone. I should have ignored it. Human affairs aren't my concern. But you ran with such desperate hope, as if freedom were something you could catch if you just ran fast enough. Alar's throat tightened. How did you know I was running toward freedom? Because I know the sound of chains breaking. He touched the curtain, but didn't pull it back. What were you escaping? She shouldn't answer. Shouldn't trust this creature who admitted to being a monster. But the exhaustion, the fear, the 3 days of solitude, cracked something open inside her. A marriage, she whispered. Arranged. To a lord twice my age, who wanted a young bride to parade and break in private. I found letters proof he'd destroyed his last 3 wives. Accidents. The courts called them. I called them murders. Her hands curled into fists. So I ran before the wedding, stole a horse, burned my dowry papers, and fled into these woods because I knew he'd never follow. Too proud to chase ruined goods, Kieran turned to face her, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. Or remembrance. You chose death over captivity. I chose the possibility of life over the certainty of slow destruction. Brave, he said quietly. Foolish, but brave, says the vampire who's been running for 60 years. His laugh startled them both, sharp and genuine and entirely unexpected. Touch, little rabbit. My name is Alara. Alara. He tested it like wine. It suits you better than rabbit. He crossed back to her, extending one pale hand. Come, if you're staying, you need to understand the rules of this house. What you can touch, where you cannot go, how to survive until we determine what to do with you. She looked at his offered hand, inhuman, dangerous, impossibly gentle, took it. His skin was cool, but not cold, solid, real. Rule 1, Kieran said, as he pulled her to her feet. After dark, stay inside, always. And Rule 2? His silver eyes held secrets that made her shiver. Don't trust me completely. Not yet. Chapter 3. Nocturnal Essence. The manor had 73 rooms, 12 staircases, and a library that made Alar's breath catch. Kieran led her through the east wing as the floating candles drifted alongside them like curious spirits. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, never making a sound, while her footsteps echoed against marble floors inlaid with silver patterns she didn't recognize. Your room, he said, opening a door to reveal a chamber that belonged in a palace. A 4-poster bed draped in midnight blue silk dominated the space. Mullioned windows overlooked gardens she couldn't see in the darkness. A fireplace already crackled with warmth that hadn't been there moments before. The house knows when rooms are occupied, Kieran explained at her startled expression. It prepares accordingly. You'll find clothes in the wardrobe they should fit. The magic is quite precise about such things. Alara stepped inside, running her fingers along the bed's carved posts. This is too much. This is necessity. You'll be here at least a fortnight while I determine how to satisfy the blood debt and ensure your safety. He remained in the doorway, careful not to cross the threshold. The bathroom is through that door. Hot water, soap, towels all provided. Lock your door at night if it makes you comfortable, though I promise you're safer in this house than anywhere else in the kingdom. Why won't you come in? His jaw tightened. Vampire law. We cannot enter a human's claimed space without explicit invitation. Even in our own homes, if we've designated a room as theirs. He met her eyes. It's one of the old protections, built into our nature to prevent exactly the kind of predation you fear. So if I invited you, don't. The word came sharp. Not yet. Not until you understand what that means. Alara's pulse quickened at the unspoken weight in his voice. What does it mean? It means trust. Real trust. Not the kind born of desperation or gratitude. Kieran stepped back from the doorway. Rest. When you wake, we'll talk more. The sun rises in 4 hours. I'll be unavailable until dusk. Because you'll burn? Because I'll be dead. He said it matter-of-factly. Day sleep isn't sleep as you know it. It's closer to death. No dreams, no awareness. Completely vulnerable. His expression darkened. Which is why the location of my resting place is the most closely guarded secret in this house. If House Dreven ever found it, they'd kill you while you couldn't fight back. Precisely. He inclined his head. Good night, Alara. Don't wander the south wing. The wards there don't recognize you yet. And they're unpleasant to those they don't know. He vanished before she could respond. Simply dissolved into shadow and was gone. Alara locked the door. She didn't sleep. How could she? Knowing a vampire slept somewhere beneath her, dead until sunset? Knowing that hunters prowled the forest beyond the wards, waiting for a chance to strike? Instead, she bathed in water that ran hot without visible pipes. changed into a nightgown of silk that fit perfectly, and watched the sky lighten through her window. Dawn came like a held breath releasing. The moment the sun crested the horizon, the house changed. The floating candles winked out. The shadows retreated to normal corners. Even the air felt different, less watchful, less alive. Alara tested her door, unlocked it, stepped into the hallway. Silence, complete and total. She knew she should stay in her room. Knew Kieran had warned her, but 3 days of running had taught her that safety was an illusion. And she'd rather understand her cage than cower in ignorance. The library called to her like a siren song. It occupied the entire North Tower, 3 stories of books spiraling upward around a central atrium. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the floor in jeweled colors. Alara ran her fingers along leather spines, reading titles in languages she recognized and some she didn't. A compendium of house laws, volume 7. The ethics of feeding, a philosophical treatise. Blood oaths and their bindings. The Dreven massacres, a survivor's account. She pulled that last one down with shaking hands. The book fell open to a page marked with a black ribbon. A sketch showed a grand estate burning, bodies strewn across the grounds. The caption read, House Ashford, the night of the purge. 43 vampires slaughtered in their day sleep. Only one survived. Underneath, in neat handwriting, I survived because I was weak. Because I hid while they died. Because I was a coward. You're awake. Alara spun. A woman stood in the doorway, elderly, human, carrying a breakfast tray. She wore a simple gray dress, and had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. I'm Mrs. Thorne, the woman said, setting the tray on a reading table. The housekeeper. I live in the village, come up during the day to keep things running. She eyed Alara with open curiosity. You must be the girl Master Kieran brought home last night. First guest we've had in 30 years. I'm Alara. I'm not exactly a guest. More of a complication. Mrs. Thorne smiled. Aren't we all, dear? Eat. You look half-starved. She began dusting shelves with practiced efficiency. Master Kieran left instructions. You're to have free run of the house during daylight, excepting the south wing and the cellars. Touch nothing in the armory. Don't attempt to leave the grounds, the wards will stop you, and it's unpleasant. You're very calm about working for a vampire. I've worked for Master Kieran for 40 years. He's paid me fairly, treated me with respect, and never once threatened me or mine. Mrs. Thorne's expression turned fierce, which is more than I can say for most human lords in these parts, including the one you ran from, I'd wager. Alara's cheeks burned. How did you? Master Kieran told me you'd need clothes that fit, shoes that wouldn't fall apart, and discretion. The older woman's voice softened. I've seen that look before, girl. The look of someone who's escaped hell and can't quite believe they're still breathing. You're safe here, safer than you've ever been. Even though he's a monster? Is he? Mrs. Thorne gestured to the book in Alara's hands. A monster who mourns his dead for 60 years, who holds to codes even when they cost him, who risks his life to save a stranger. She met Alara's eyes. I've lived long enough to know that monsters wear all sorts of faces. And sometimes the ones who look most human are the ones you should fear most. Alara looked down at the sketch of the burning house, at the handwritten confession of survival and guilt. What happened to him? She whispered. After everyone died? That, Mrs. Thorne said gently, is his story to tell. When he's ready. If he's ready. She moved toward the door. Eat, child. Explore if you like. But be back in your room by sunset. He'll want to speak with you. About what? The housekeeper paused in the doorway, her expression unreadable. About what happens when the blood debt comes due, and whether you'll choose to let him pay it. She left Alara alone with the books and the sunlight and the growing certainty that she'd stumbled into something far more complicated than simple survival. Outside, in the forest beyond the wards, something howled. House Dreven was still hunting. Chapter 4. Threads of Truth. Sunset arrived with the sound of the house waking. Alara sat in the library's window seat, watching shadows lengthen across the gardens as candles sparked to life throughout the manor. She'd spent the day reading devouring histories of vampire houses, their laws, their wars. The blood debt that bound Kieran to her was ancient, she'd learned, unbreakable. A life saved demanded a life protected until the debt was balanced. The question was, how did one balance such a debt? You've been busy. She didn't startle this time. Kieran stood among the bookshelves, his silver hair loose around his shoulders, dressed in dark gray that made his pale skin luminous. He looked more alive than he had last night, color in his cheeks, strength in his posture. "I fed," he said, catching her stare. He held up a vial, now empty. "It helps. Makes me more human, temporarily." He crossed to where she sat, his gaze falling on the stack of books beside her. "Learning our secrets? Trying to understand my situation." Alara closed the volume on blood debts. "The books say you're bound to protect me until the debt is satisfied. But they don't say how long that takes, or what satisfies it, because it varies." Kieran settled against the window frame, careful to keep distance between them. "Some debts are paid in days, a warning given, a danger avoided. Others take years, decades even." His eyes found hers. "It depends on the magnitude of what was saved, and what was saved when I fell in front of that arrow. My life, potentially." He touched his chest where the arrow had struck. The challenge arrow was silver-tipped. "Blessed, one of the few things that can truly kill my kind. If it had struck my heart," he shrugged, "I would have died, permanently." Alara's throat tightened. "I didn't know. I didn't mean to, I know." "Which makes the debt even more binding." Kieran's expression softened. "You risked yourself without thought of reward. Pure instinct. The oldest magic recognizes that kind of sacrifice. So I'm trapped here indefinitely while you figure out how to repay me for something I did by accident." "You say trapped. I say protected." His voice carried an edge. "House Dreven has watchers in every village within 50 miles. They know you're here now. They know you matter to me, even if only as a debt holder. That makes you a target." "I was already running. Already a target of a different kind. Your former fiancé is human. Cruel, yes. Dangerous, certainly. But human." Kieran leaned closer, and she caught the scent of him, night-blooming flowers and old parchment. "Lord Cassius Dreven is 300 years old and collects the hearts of his enemies in jars. He would drain you slowly, keep you conscious to watch your own death, then send me your corpse as a message." His silver eyes held hers. "Do you understand the difference?" Alara forced herself not to look away. "I understand. I've traded one prison for another." Something flickered across Kieran's face, hurt, maybe, or disappointment. He straightened. "Then let me show you something. Come." He didn't wait for her agreement, just turned and walked deeper into the library. Alara followed, curiosity overriding caution. He led her to a section she hadn't explored yet, where the books looked older, their spines cracked and faded. With careful hands, he pulled down a leather-bound journal and opened it to a page marked with dried flowers. "This was my sister's," he said quietly. "Catherine. She was 22 when House Dreven came for us. She loved gardens and poetry and terrible jokes that made everyone groan." He touched the pressed flowers, forget-me-nots. Their blue petals faded to gray. "She died in her sleep. Never knew what hit her. I consider that a mercy." Alara looked at the delicate handwriting on the page. "A poem about spring that would never come." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "So am I." Kieran closed the journal with reverence. "For 60 years, I've existed in this house, bound by wards and caution. I venture out only when necessary. I speak to Mrs. Thorne and the handful of humans I pay for blood donations. I read, I remember, I survive." He turned to face her fully. "You call it a prison. I call it a tomb I'm too cowardly to leave." The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. "Why tell me this?" Alara asked. "Because you deserve to know what you've walked into. What I am beyond the monster in the stories." Kieran's hands clenched at his sides. "I am lonely, Alara. Profoundly, devastatingly lonely. And having you here, a human who doesn't scream, who asks questions, who looks at me like I might be something other than a nightmare, it's dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "Because I might convince myself you could stay. That the debt could last long enough for me to remember what it's like to have someone to talk to who isn't paid to tolerate my presence." His voice dropped. "And that wouldn't be protection. That would be selfishness." Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She thought of her former fiancé, who'd seen her as property. Thought of Kieran, who feared his own desire for companionship might compromise her safety. "What if I wanted to stay?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Kieran went utterly still. "You don't know what you're saying. I know I've spent 3 days running, and the first moment I felt safe was when you carried me through that door." She gestured to the library around them. "I know I've learned more in 1 day here than in years of my so-called education. I know you've been honest with me when everyone else in my life has lied. I'm a vampire, Alara, not a savior. I don't need a savior. I needed a chance. She stepped closer, watching him tense. You gave me that. Maybe I can give you something too. What could you possibly give me? Company, conversation, someone who sees Catherine's flowers and knows she mattered. Alara's voice steadied. Someone who doesn't think surviving makes you a coward. Kieran's expression cracked just for a moment. She saw the grief beneath the control, the desperate hope he wouldn't let himself feel. You're proposing we use each other, he said finally. I protect you from Dreven. You keep me from going mad in my isolation. I'm proposing we help each other. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. She held his gaze. One involves choice. The other doesn't. Silence stretched between them, filled with the whisper of pages and the crackle of distant fires. Outside, night deepened into true darkness. Somewhere in the forest, she knew, vampires hunted and plotted and waited. Kieran extended his hand, palm up. An offering, not a demand. Then choose, he said softly. Stay as my guest, not my prisoner. Help me satisfy this blood debt while keeping us both alive. And when it's done, when you're safe, you walk away free. No obligations, no chains. Alara looked at his hand, pale, steady, scarred along the knuckles from some long ago violence. She took it, his fingers closed around hers. Cool and certain. Partners, she said. Partners, Kieran agreed. And somewhere deep in the house, a clock chimed the hour. The first thread of trust had been woven. Neither of them noticed the shadow that detached from the garden wall outside, or the way it melted into the forest with inhuman speed. House Dreven's watchers had seen enough. Chapter 5. The watchers close in. The attack came 3 nights later. Alara woke to the sound of glass shattering and Kieran's voice sharp, commanding echoing through the manor. She grabbed the robe Mrs. Thorne had left for her and rushed into the hallway, her heart in her throat. Stay in your room. Kieran's shout came from somewhere below. Lock the door and don't come out until his words cut off with a sound like thunder. Alara ran toward the stairs instead of away. Foolish, perhaps, but 3 nights of careful conversations over books and tea had shifted something in her. She couldn't hide while he fought alone. The entrance hall was chaos. 2 vampires circled Kieran in the center of the floor, both dressed in crimson that marked them as House Dreven. One was tall and blade thin, with white blonde hair. The other was broader, dark-haired, moving with the efficiency of a seasoned killer. They'd shattered the spelled windows, breaking the wards that kept the manor secure. Kieran held them off with nothing but his bare hands and inhuman speed, but she could see the strain in his movements. His blood stained his shirt from a wound that wasn't healing as fast as it should. Bless Silver, the blonde vampire laughed, holding up claws that gleamed with a natural light. Lord Cassius sends his regards, Ashford. He's tired of this game. Tonight you die, and your little human pet becomes his prize. Touch her and I'll rip out your throat. Kieran snarled. Brave words from a dead house. The dark-haired vampire lunged. Alara didn't think. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy bronze candlestick from the hall table, and hurled it with all her strength. It struck the dark-haired vampire's temple with a satisfying crack. He stumbled, snarling, his attention whipping toward her. Run! Kieran roared, but the blonde vampire was already moving, impossibly fast, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. His hand closed around Alara's throat, lifting her off her feet with casual strength. Pretty thing, he murmured, his fangs extending. I can see why Ashford keeps you. Your blood smells like. Kieran hit him like a battering ram. They crashed through the wall into the parlor beyond, taking chunks of plaster and wood with them. Alara fell hard, gasping for air, her throat bruised where he'd gripped her. The dark-haired vampire advanced on her with a predator's smile. Cassius wants you alive, he said conversationally. But he didn't say unmarked. A blur of motion, and suddenly Mrs. Thorne stood between them, wielding a fireplace poker like a sword. The old woman's face was set in grim determination. You'll not touch her, demon, she spat. The vampire laughed then screamed as the poker struck his hand. It hissed and smoked where the iron touched his skin. Cold iron, Mrs. Thorne said grimly. Blessed by a proper priest, not your corrupted night clergy. Back away or lose the hand. In the parlor, Kieran and the blonde vampire fought with savage intensity. Furniture splintered. Paintings fell. Alara watched Kieran move all grace and lethal precision, but the blessed silver was slowing him down. Poison in his veins, he was losing. The realization hit her like ice water. Kieran was older, stronger, but he was fighting poison and outnumbered. House Drevin had planned this perfectly, waited until he was weakest, struck when he'd dropped his guard, because of her. Because he'd been distracted keeping her safe. We need to help him, Alara gasped, struggling to her feet. We need to survive, Mrs. Thorne countered, keeping the iron poker between them and the dark-haired vampire. Master Kieran's fought worse, not poisoned. Not alone. Alara's mind raced through everything she'd read in the library. Vampire weaknesses, house laws, the binding oaths that governed their world. Mrs. Thorne, the blood debt, it works both ways, doesn't it? He's bound to protect me, but I have power in that binding. But then I'm calling it in. Alara didn't know if it would work. The books had been vague on the specifics, but she closed her eyes and felt for the thread that connected her to Kieran, the invisible bond forged the moment she'd accidentally saved his life. I need you, she thought, pushing the words along that thread with desperate intensity. I need your strength. Take it from me. For a heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then the bond sang. Power flowed out of her like water from a broken dam, her life force, her vitality, everything that made her human and alive. It rushed toward Kieran along the connection between them, and she felt his shock, his resistance, his attempt to refuse. She pushed harder. Take it, use it. When Dot in the parlor, Kieran's eyes flared silver bright. The blessed silver wounds on his chest began to close, forced out by the surge of human life flooding his system. He moved with renewed speed, catching the blonde vampire's next strike and twisting, breaking bone with an audible crack. What did you do? The blonde vampire hissed. She's paying the debt, Kieran said, his voice resonant with borrowed life. And you just became the price. What happened next was brutal and efficient. Kieran tore through the blonde vampire with ruthless precision, then turned on the dark-haired one before he could flee. Mrs. Thorne wisely pulled Alara back as Kieran ended both attackers with the cold finality of a vampire who'd survived 60 years of hunting. When it was done, he stood among the ruins of his entrance hall, breathing hard despite not needing air. Covered in blood that wasn't his own, his eyes found Alara's. You shouldn't have done that, he said hoarsely. You were dying. I've died before. I would have healed. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands hovering near her face, but not quite touching. What you did, feeding me your life force through the debt bond, that's forbidden. Dangerous. You could have killed yourself, but I didn't. Alara swayed, suddenly aware of how drained she felt. And you're alive. Barely worth the trade, he muttered. But his hands finally touched her, one cupping her cheek, the other steadying her waist. Foolish, brave, absolutely reckless human. Partners, she reminded him weakly. Partners help each other. Partners don't sacrifice themselves. He stopped, his expression shifting as he truly looked at her. You're pale, weak. You gave too much. Without warning, he lifted her into his arms. Mrs. Thorne, prepare the tea. The restorative blend. And food, red meat, iron-rich, already on it. Master Kieran, the housekeeper, was already moving toward the kitchen. Kieran carried Alara toward the stairs, his jaw tight. House Drevin knows now. They know the bond between us is active, real. That makes you even more valuable as leverage. So what do? We prepare. His silver eyes were hard as steel. Because Cassius won't send lackeys next time. He'll come himself. And when he does, we need to be ready. For what? Kieran's arms tightened around her, protective and possessive in equal measure. For war. Chapter 6. Blood and Revelation. Alara woke in her bed with no memory of getting there. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting golden squares across the coverlet. Her body felt hollow, wrung out like wet cloth left to dry. When she tried to sit up, the room tilted dangerously. Easy, Mrs. Thorne appeared at her bedside with a tray. You've been asleep for 16 hours. Master Kieran said you'd be weak. Where is he? Day sleep. He sat with you until dawn, made me promise to wake him the moment you stirred. The housekeeper set the tray across Alara's lap. Beef broth, dark bread, and something that looked like liver. Eat, all of it. You need to rebuild what you gave him. Alara picked at the food, her stomach turning. Is he all right? Right as rain. Thanks to you. Watched him carry those Drevin bodies into the forest himself, bold as brass. Left them where their house would find them a message, he said. Mrs. Thorne's expression was grave. You did something powerful last night, child. Something that's changed the game between you two. The blood debt is more than a debt now. The older woman sat on the edge of the bed. What you did, channeling your life force to him through the bond. That only works when there's resonance. When the debt holder and the protector are aligned, connected beyond simple obligation. Alara's hand trembled around her spoon. What does that mean? It means the magic recognizes something between you. Trust, maybe. Or the beginning of something deeper. Mrs. Thorne's eyes were kind but worried. It also means House Dreven will see you as more than leverage now. They'll see you as a threat. A human who can strengthen their enemy. I'm not a threat. I'm just a woman who fought off vampires with a candlestick and saved Kieran's life twice in 1 week. Mrs. Thorne smiled. You're no threat at all. Alara forced herself to eat, knowing she'd need her strength. Through the window, she could see the damage from last night's attack: shattered glass, scorched earth where vampire blood had spilled, the gaping hole in the manor's wall. How long until he wakes? She asked. 3 hours, give or take. Sunset comes early this time of year. Mrs. Thorne stood, collecting the empty dishes. Rest more, if you can. When he wakes, he'll want to talk. About what happens next. About the choice you'll have to make. What choice? But the housekeeper was already gone, leaving Alara alone with her racing thoughts and the growing certainty that everything had shifted last night. She'd felt it in the moment her life force had poured into Kieran, the connection snapping into place like a lock finding its key. She should be terrified. Should be planning her escape. Instead, she found herself counting the hours until sunset. Kieran came to her the moment the sun dipped below the horizon. Alara was in the library again, seeking comfort in books, when he appeared in the doorway. He looked different, somehow more vibrant, more alive than she'd ever seen him. His silver hair caught the candlelight. His eyes held warmth instead of cold distance. You're awake, he said, his voice rough. How do you feel? Hollow, but alive. She closed the book she hadn't been reading. Mrs. Thorne said I slept 16 hours. You needed it. What you did, he crossed to her, dropping into the chair opposite with unusual gracelessness. Do you understand what you did, Alara? The bond you've activated? Mrs. Thorne said it requires resonance. Alignment. It requires compatibility. Kieran leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The old magic that governs blood debts was designed to prevent abuse. A vampire can't just claim any human as a debt holder and use them as a source of power. The human has to be willing, compatible on a fundamental level. He met her eyes. You could have rejected the bond. Most humans do instinctively. Their survival instinct overrides the magic. But you didn't. You opened yourself completely and fed me your life without hesitation. You were dying. I've died before. I'll die again someday. His hands clenched. But you're mortal, fragile, and you risked yourself to save me. Again. The word came out like an accusation. Why? Alara thought about lying. About claiming it was simple strategy or self-preservation. She needed him alive to protect her from Dreven, after all. But she'd promised herself honesty in this house of shadows, because the thought of you dying hurt more than the thought of giving you my life. Kieran went absolutely still. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. You've known me less than a week. I've known cruelty my entire life. Kindness stands out. She forced herself to hold his gaze. You gave me sanctuary when you could have left me to die. You've been honest about what you are, what you want, what you fear. You treat me like a person, not a possession. Her throat tightened. In my experience, that's worth saving. Alara, he seemed to struggle for words. What you're describing, gratitude, respect, those aren't reasons to bind yourself to a vampire through life force resonance. That bond is dangerous, addictive for both parties. The more you feed me, the more I'll crave your particular essence. The more I take, the more connected we become. Is that what you felt? Last night, when I gave you my life. His jaw worked. Finally, yes, I felt you. Your fear, your determination, your absolute conviction that I was worth saving. His eyes flashed silver. I felt your heartbeat as if it were my own. Tasted your emotions like wine. And when I killed those vampires, I could feel your horror and relief tangled together. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. It's intoxicating, overwhelming, everything the old laws warn against, because it makes the vampire too attached to the human, because it makes both parties too attached to each other. Kieran pressed his palm against the glass. There are stories, old stories of vampires and humans who formed these bonds. Some ended in tragedy when the human died and the vampire went mad from the severed connection. Others ended when the vampire offered the turning, desperate to keep their bonded partner forever. the turning. Elara had read about it, the process of transforming human to vampire through blood exchange and death. Permanent, irreversible. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. To turn me? No, the word came fast and fierce. God, no. You're alive, Elara, warm and mortal and beautiful in ways I haven't been for centuries. The thought of stealing that from you, of making you into what I am. He turned to face her, and she saw anguish in his expression. I would rather die again than do that to you. Then what do you want? The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to name. Kieran crossed back to her slowly, deliberately. He knelt before her chair, bringing them eye to eye. I want you safe. I want House Dreven destroyed so you can live without fear. I want to satisfy this blood debt and send you back into the world as a free woman. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek. And I want, selfishly, to keep you here forever. To have someone who sees me as something other than a monster. To hear your voice and your laugh and your infuriatingly brave stupidity every night until the stars burn out. His hand finally touched her face, cool fingers against warm skin. So you tell me, Elara, what do you want? She should want freedom, safety, a return to normal human life. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. I want to stop running, she whispered. I want to matter to someone who matters to me. I want the truth caught in her throat. I want to stay, at least for now. At least until we've finished this. Finished what? Whatever this is between us. She covered his hand with hers. Partnership, bond, whatever we're becoming. Kieran's eyes closed. When they opened again, they blazed with something fierce and tender and entirely dangerous. Then we have a problem, he said softly. What problem? Because now I have to keep you alive through a war with the most powerful vampire house in the kingdom. And I've just discovered that losing you would destroy me. Outside in the gathering dark, wolves howled, but these weren't natural wolves. House Dreven was circling, and this time, they were bringing an army. Chapter 7. The siege begins. They came at midnight, when the moon hung full and bloated over the forest. Elara stood beside Kieran in the armory, a room she'd been forbidden to enter until tonight. Weapons lined the walls, swords, daggers, crossbows, and things she didn't have names for. All forged from silver, blessed iron, or stranger metals that seemed to drink the candlelight. House Dreven travels with a war party of 20, Kieran said, strapping a blade to his hip with practiced efficiency. Cassius will lead them personally this time. He's arrogant, but he's survived 3 centuries by being ruthless and smart. He handed her a dagger with a handle wrapped in leather. Keep this on you. If anyone gets past me, they won't. Elara took the blade, surprised by its weight. If they do, Kieran continued firmly, you aim for the heart or throat. Nothing else will stop them fast enough. He caught her chin gently, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. No heroics. We're partners. Partners don't abandon. Partners trust each other to know when the fight is lost. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Promise me, Elara, if it comes to that, you'll save yourself. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him she'd rather die fighting beside him than live knowing she'd left him to face this alone. But the desperation in his silver eyes stopped her. I promise, she lied. He knew she was lying. She could see it in the sad smile that ghosted across his face. But he didn't call her on it, just pressed a brief, cool kiss to her forehead. Stay close to me, he murmured. No matter what happens. The wards shattered with a sound like breaking crystal. Kieran moved instantly, pulling Elara behind him as the manor's spelled protections collapsed. Through the armory windows, she saw them coming, figures flowing through the forest like smoke, their eyes reflecting red in the moonlight. 20 vampires. Maybe more. They brought a ward breaker. Kieran growled. Someone with old magic, older than mine. He grabbed Elara's hand. The safe room, now. What safe room? He pulled her into the hallway and down a flight of stairs she'd never noticed before. The manor shifted around them, walls sliding open, revealing passages that shouldn't exist. Old magic, built into the foundations, responding to its master's need. They descended into darkness, lit only by Kieran's silver eyes. At the bottom, a door stood, sealed with symbols that glowed faintly blue. My day sleep chamber, Kieran said, pressing his palm to the door. Warded against everything except sunlight. They can't break in, can't breach it without my death. The door swung open to reveal a room carved from solid stone. A simple bed, shelves of books, nothing else. You'll be safe here while I deal with. No, Elara planted her feet. I'm not hiding while you fight alone. This isn't negotiable, you said we're bound. That my life force can strengthen you. She grabbed his arm. So use me. Let me help. You're still weak from last night. If you channel again so soon, it could kill you. And if you fight them alone, they'll definitely kill you. She met his eyes, fierce and certain. I didn't save your life twice just to watch you throw it away. Now, we do this together or not at all. Above them, something crashed. Voices echoed through the manor, cruel laughter, the sound of destruction. House Dreven was inside. Kieran's jaw clenched. You're the most stubborn human I've ever encountered. Good thing stubbornness is compatible with your particular brand of martyrdom. She squeezed his arm. Please, let me fight beside you. For a heartbeat, she thought he'd refuse. Lock her in the safe room and face the horde alone, out of some misguided need to protect her. But then his expression shifted, resignation mixing with something that looked like pride. Stay behind me. Channel only if I ask. And if I die, he caught her face between his hands. If I die, you seal yourself in here and wait for sunrise. Mrs. Thorne knows to come for you. Promise me. I promise. This time, she meant it. They ascended together into chaos. The entrance hall was a battlefield. Vampires in crimson swarmed through the shattered windows, their fangs bared, moving with inhuman speed. Mrs. Thorne fought at the base of the stairs with her blessed iron poker. 3 vampires already dissolving into ash around her. About time. The old woman shouted. I'm too old for this nonsense. Kieran moved like liquid death. His blade sang through the air, catching a vampire mid-leap and severing its head cleanly. Ash exploded where the body had been. He spun, catching another by the throat and slamming it into the wall with enough force to crack stone. Alara tried to track the battle, but everything moved too fast. Vampires fell to Kieran's blade, only to be replaced by more. They weren't trying to kill him. Quickly, she realized. They were wearing him down, making him expend energy, waiting for the blessed silver poison to slow him again. This was a war of attrition, and they were losing. A vampire broke through Kieran's defense, lunging for Alara with claws extended. She raised her dagger on instinct, but the creature was too fast. It would reach her before she could strike. Then Kieran was there, taking the blow meant for her. Claws raked across his back, blessed silver burning through cloth and flesh. He snarled in pain, but didn't fall, spinning to drive his blade through the attacker's chest. Kieran. Alara reached for him as he staggered. I'm fine, he gritted out, but she could see the poison spreading, black veins crawling up his neck from the wounds. You're not fine. You need. She didn't finish. Jess grabbed his hand and opened the bond between them, letting her life force pour into him like she had before. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Kieran's eyes blazed silver white. The wounds on his back began to close, the poison burning away under the flood of human vitality. But this time, Alara felt the connection differently, not just giving, but sharing. She felt his pain become hers, his strength become hers, until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. Enough, Kieran gasped, trying to pull away. You'll kill yourself, then we die together, she said through gritted teeth. A slow clap echoed through the hall. The fighting stopped. Vampires backed away from Kieran, forming a semicircle as a figure stepped through the shattered doorway. He was beautiful in the way winter is beautiful, cold and lethal and absolutely merciless. Blonde hair fell to his shoulders. His crimson coat was embroidered with gold thread, and his eyes were the color of fresh blood. Lord Cassius Dreven, Kieran said, his voice flat. Come to finish what you started 60 years ago. Come to claim what's mine. Cassius's gaze slid to Alara, and she felt the weight of it like ice water down her spine. The last Ashford and his intriguing little human. The bond between you fairly glows. How romantic. His smile was a predator's smile. And how ultimately futile. He raised one hand. 20 vampires tensed, ready to strike. Kill Ashford, Cassius commanded. But bring me the girl alive. I have questions about a human who can strengthen our kind through life force resonance. His eyes gleamed. And I have plans. The vampires attacked as one. Kieran pulled Alara against him. His arms a cage of protection, and she felt him reach for the bond between them, not to take from her this time, but to give something back. Power flooded into her. Vampire strength, vampire speed, just enough to let her survive what came next. Together, he whispered against her hair. Together, she agreed, and they fought. Chapter 8. Human and Genuite battle became a blur of silver and ash. Alara moved with strength that wasn't entirely her own, Kieran's power flowing through the bond. enhancing her reflexes just enough to keep her alive. She wasn't graceful like the vampires, but she was unpredictable, and that counted for something. A vampire lunged at her from the left. She dropped low, letting it overshoot, then drove her dagger up into its chest. The blessed silver did the rest. The creature exploded into ash with a scream that made her ears ring. Behind you. Mrs. Thorne's shout came just in time. Elara spun, raising her dagger, but Kieran was already there, his blade singing through the air. 3 vampires fell in rapid succession, their ashes mingling with the debris littering the floor, but more kept coming. Cassius stood in the doorway like a general, watching his troops, never entering the fray himself, just smiling that cold, cruel smile. He's not fighting, Elara gasped, ducking under Kieran's arm as he parried another attack. Why isn't he fighting? Because he doesn't need to. Kieran's voice was strained. Even with her life force bolstering him, he was tiring. 30 vampires, not 20, and all fresh, all eager. He'll let them exhaust us, then step in for the killing blow. It's how he's always fought. Elara's mind raced. They couldn't win this through strength alone. Kieran was powerful, but he wasn't invincible. Mrs. Thorne was mortal and flagging. And Elara herself was running on borrowed power and adrenaline. They needed an advantage. Something unexpected. Her eyes fell on the shattered windows, the broken wards, the way the manor's magic had dimmed when the protections fell. But not all magic came from wards. Some was built into the structure itself, the floating candles, the self-heating rooms. The way doors opened for their master, the house still responded to Kieran. The manor, she said urgently, grabbing Kieran's arm during a brief lull. Can you control it? Make it fight for us? He faltered, parrying another strike. I've never tried. The magic is passive, responsive, not you're its master. Your blood is in the foundations. She pressed closer, lowering her voice. Use the bond. Use me as a conduit. Channel your will through human life into old magic. See if it responds. Kieran's eyes widened. That's insane. Do you have a better idea? A vampire broke through their defense, claws reaching for Elara's throat. Kieran caught it by the wrist and tore its arm off with brutal efficiency, but 2 more took its place. Fine, he snarled. But if this kills you, I'm going to be very angry. Noted, Elara gripped his hand and opened the bond wider than she ever had before. Not just sharing strength this time, but merging, letting his consciousness blend with hers until she couldn't tell whose heartbeat she felt, whose breath came in ragged gasps. Through the bond, she felt Kieran reach for the manor's magic, felt him pour his will into the ancient stones, demanding obedience, commanding protection. And she felt the house wake. The floating candles blazed brilliant blue, then dove-like birds of prey. They struck vampires with explosive force, their flames clinging like napalm. Screams filled the air as 3 attackers dissolved into ash. The walls moved. Stone hands erupted from the floor, grabbing vampires by their ankles, pulling them down. Doors slammed shut on limbs. Windows crashed, closed like jaws. The manor became a living thing, fighting alongside its master with brutal creativity. Impossible, Cassius said, his smile finally fading. The house magic shouldn't. Blood and life and old oaths, Kieran said, his voice resonating with borrowed power. Your mistake was assuming I'd fight by the new rules, Cassius. This house was built in the first age. It remembers how vampires used to war. The tide turned. With the manor fighting for them, Kieran and Elara became an unstoppable force. He cut through vampires with surgical precision, while she directed the house's attacks, learning instinctively which thoughts became which actions. She imagined the chandelier falling, it crashed down onto vampires. She pictured the fireplace roaring to life, flames erupted, driving attackers back. Mrs. Thorne rallied, her blessed poker finding hearts with deadly accuracy. Within minutes, only 5 vampires remained. Then 3. Then just Cassius, standing alone among the ash of his war party, his expression carved from ice. Clever, he said coldly, using human life to awaken old magic. I'll remember that trick. His eyes fixed on Elara. Tell me, little human, how does it feel to be a weapon? Does he tell you that's what you are? A tool to make him strong enough to survive? Shut your mouth, Kieran growled, stepping between them. Or what? You'll kill me? Cassius laughed. We both know you can't. Not without breaking the accords. Kill a house lord without formal challenge, and every vampire in the kingdom will hunt you down, regardless of old grievances. He straightened his crimson coat. So here we are, stalemate. Again. Alara felt Kieran's frustration through the bond rage and helplessness warring inside him. Cassius was right. The vampire laws were absolute. Even justified violence against a house lord meant death, unless I can kill him, Alara said quietly. Both vampires turned to stare at her. What? Kieran's voice was sharp. The Accords govern vampires, not humans. Alara kept her eyes on Cassius, her dagger steady in her hand. I'm not bound by your laws. If I kill you, there's no violation, no grounds for retaliation. Cassius's smile returned, cold and amused. You? Kill me? Little girl. I'm 300 years old. I've slaughtered armies. What makes you think she threw the dagger? It wasn't a good throw. Wasn't even particularly accurate. But in the split second, Cassius focused on her, dismissed her as a threat. Kieran moved. He caught Cassius by the throat and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack stone. She's right about one thing, Kieran said softly. The Accords have loopholes. And you just threatened my bonded partner in my own home. Bonded? Cassius's eyes widened. You actually bonded with a human? Are you mad? Probably. Kieran's grip tightened. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to tell the other houses that House Ashford lives, that I have a human ally who can wake old magic, and that any further attacks will be met with total war. No Accords, no mercy, just blood and ash. And if I refuse, then I'll let her kill you, claim self-defense on her behalf, and dare the houses to challenge a human protected by life bond rights. Kieran's smile was all teeth. Your choice, Cassius. Leave alive, or stay as ash. For a long moment, Cassius simply stared. Then, impossibly he laughed. You've changed, Ashford. Grown claws finally. He pushed away from the wall, straightening his coat. Very well. I'll deliver your message. But understand this isn't over. The girl is too valuable, too dangerous. The houses will come for her eventually. Bond or no bond, let them try, Alara said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. Cassius's gaze slid to her, assessment in his blood-red eyes. You don't know what you've become, do you? What? He's made you? He turned toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Enjoy your victory, little human. It won't last. He vanished into the night, leaving only silence and ash behind. Alara's legs gave out. Kieran caught her before she hit the floor, his arms cradling her against his chest. The bond between them was still wide open, and she felt his relief, his terror, his overwhelming gratitude all tangled together. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever witnessed, he said hoarsely. Worked though, she managed. You could have died, should have died. He pressed his forehead to hers. Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that. I know. His laugh was shaky. I know, Mrs. Thorne cleared her throat. Much as I hate to interrupt, we should seal the wards. Cassius might come back with reinforcements, but Alara barely heard. The adrenaline was fading, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. The last thing she felt was Kieran lifting her, carrying her somewhere safe. His voice, a murmur against her hair. I've got you. Sleep. I've got you. And for the first time in her life, she believed it. Chapter 9. The quiet between storms. Alara woke to silence and candlelight. She lay in her bed, the covers pulled up to her chin, her body aching in ways she'd never experienced. Every muscle felt bruised, her bones hollow, her skin too tight. The cost of channeling life force twice in as many days. You're awake. Kieran sat in the chair beside her bed, his silver hair loose, his eyes shadowed with something between relief and guilt. He looked different in the soft candlelight, younger somehow, more human, though she knew that was an illusion. How long? Her voice came out as a rasp. 2 days. You've been drifting in and out. He reached for a glass of water on the bedside table, helping her sit up to drink. His hands were gentle, careful not to jar her. Mrs. Thorne has been forcing broth down your throat every few hours. You're lucky to be alive. Did it work? Is Cassius gone? For now. Kieran set the glass aside. He delivered my message to the other houses. There's been discussion, arguments. Some want to leave us alone. Others see you as exactly what Cassius said, too dangerous to ignore. His jaw tightened. You've become famous, Alara. The human who can wake old magic and bond with vampires through life force. Stories are spreading. Is that bad? It's complicated. He stood, pacing to the window. Dawn was breaking outside. She could see the first hints of gold touching the sky. The houses are governed by tradition. They don't like change, don't trust unknowns. A human who can do what you did threatens the balance of power. He turned to face her. But it also makes you valuable, protected under life bond laws that even the houses must respect. So we bought time. We bought uncertainty, which is almost as good. He returned to her bedside, settling back into the chair. The wards are repaired, stronger than before I wove your life signature into them. The house will recognize you as mistress now, respond to your will as it does mine. His eyes searched hers. If you want that, Alara absorbed this. Co-master of a vampire's ancient manor. It should terrify her, should send her running the moment she could stand. Instead, she found herself asking, what happens now? Now you heal, rest, build your strength back. Kieran's voice softened. And we talk about what comes after. After what? After you're well enough to leave. The words seemed to pain him. The blood debt is nearly satisfied, Alara. You saved my life twice, protected my home, helped me drive off my enemies. By any measure, the debt is paid. You're free to go wherever you choose. Free. The word should have filled her with joy. Instead, it sat heavy in her chest like a stone. And if I don't want to leave? Kieran went very still. Don't. Don't what? Don't offer to stay out of gratitude or obligation, or some misplaced sense of partnership. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his face close to hers. You've given me everything, Alara. Your trust, your strength, your life force, literally your life. You've woken something in this house and in me that I thought died 60 years ago. And that's exactly why you need to leave. I don't understand. Because I want you to stay. The confession came out raw. Desperately, selfishly. I want you here every night. Talking about books, arguing about vampire politics. Making me remember what it's like to feel something other than grief and rage. His hand lifted, hovering near her face. But wanting isn't enough. You're mortal, Alara. You have maybe 60 years left if you're lucky. And I'll have centuries beyond that, alone again, haunted by the memory of the woman who made me feel alive. Then turn me. The words escaped before she could stop them. Kieran recoiled as if she'd struck him. No, why not? You said vampires can turn humans through blood exchange. I'm already bonded to you, already tangled in your world. You don't know what you're asking. Kieran stood abruptly, backing away from the bed. The turning is death, Alara. Real death. Your heart stops. Your lungs stop. Everything human in you dies. And what comes back is something else. Something that will never feel sunlight again, never taste real food, never have children, or grow old, or die naturally. His voice broke. I won't do that to you. I won't steal your humanity because I'm too selfish to let you go. What if I'm choosing it? What if I want you're not thinking clearly? You're exhausted, traumatized, bonded to me in ways that cloud your judgment. He pressed his palms to his eyes. Ask me again in a month, when you're healed, when you've had time away from this house and me and the bond. If you still want it then, we'll talk. And if I leave and never come back? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken grief. Then I'll know I did the right thing, Kieran said finally. Even if it kills me. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being noble and stupid, and she'd already made her choice. But exhaustion dragged at her, and perhaps he was right, perhaps she was too tangled in everything to see clearly. Will you stay? She asked instead. Until I fall asleep? Relief flickered across his face. Yes. He settled back into the chair, and Alara let her eyes drift closed. But before sleep claimed her, she felt cool fingers brush her hair back from her face, and heard his whisper, I'm sorry, for all of it. She wanted to tell him there was nothing to apologize for, that he'd given her more in a week than anyone had in her entire life. But sleep pulled her under before she could form the words. The days that followed fell into a strange rhythm. Alara healed slowly, spending her mornings with Mrs. Thorne, learning the practical magic of the house, how to direct the candles, command the doors, wake the protective wards if needed. The afternoons she spent in the library, devouring books on vampire history, trying to understand the world she'd stumbled into. And the nights belonged to Kieran. He taught her things the books didn't cover. How to read vampire body language, the subtle hierarchies between houses, the unwritten rules that governed their society. They played chess. She was terrible, but improving. They debated philosophy and politics, and whether humans and vampires could ever truly coexist. They danced carefully around the conversation neither wanted to have. What happened when she was well enough to leave? A week passed. Then too, Alara's strength returned, the hollowness in her bones filling with vitality. The bond between them settled into something constant, not the overwhelming merge of battle, but a quiet awareness. She could feel Kieran even when he wasn't near, could sense his moods like changes in weather. He never touched her beyond necessity, never spoke of the turning again, never asked her to stay, but she saw it in his eyes every time he looked at her, the longing, the hope, the fear of loss. On the 15th night, Alara made her decision. She found Kieran in the music room, a space she'd only recently discovered, filled with instruments centuries old. He sat at a piano, playing something melancholy and beautiful, his fingers moving across the keys with inhuman precision. He stopped when she entered. "Can't sleep? I need to tell you something." She crossed to him, her heart hammering. "I've made my choice." About leaving, Kieran's hand stilled on the keys. He didn't look at her. "And I'm staying. Not forever. I'm not asking for the turning. Not yet. But I'm not ready to leave either." She sat beside him on the piano bench. "You were right that I needed time to think clearly, to separate gratitude from genuine feeling. So I did. And the truth is," she took a breath, "the truth is, I'm not whole anywhere else. Not anymore. This house, this partnership, you've become necessary to me. Alara, I know the risks. I know I'll age and you won't. I know this can't last forever." Her voice steadied. "But I also know that running from something good because it won't last forever is the coward's choice. And I'm done being a coward." Kieran finally turned to face her, and the naked emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He reached for her then, pulling her into his arms with a desperation that spoke of weeks of restraint breaking. His forehead pressed to hers, their breath mingling in the small space between. "Then stay," he whispered. "Stay as long as you want, as long as you can, and I'll make every moment worth it." Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall. Inside, something fragile and precious took root. Neither of them saw the letter that arrived at dawn. Carried by a raven with red eyes, the houses had made their decision, and war was coming. Chapter 10. The Choice. The letter came with dawn, sealed in black wax and bound with silver thread. Mrs. Thorne found it on the doorstep and brought it to Kieran before he descended into day sleep. Alara watched from the library doorway as he broke the seal, his expression growing darker with each line he read. "What is it?" she asked, though dread already coiled in her stomach. "A summons." Kieran's voice was flat. "From the Council of Houses. They're invoking the ancient protocols, demanding I present myself and my bonded human before them to answer for violations of the Accords." He looked up, his silver eyes hard. "They claim our bond threatens the natural order. That what you did, waking old magic, channeling life force, sets a dangerous precedent. What happens if we refuse? They'll declare me rogue, strip House Ashford of its remaining rights and protections. Every vampire in the kingdom will be authorized to hunt us both." He crumpled the letter in his fist. "It's a trap. Cassius must have convinced them you're too dangerous to ignore." Alara crossed to him, her mind racing. "When do they want us?" 3 nights from now. In the old capital, before the full council. Kieran's jaw clenched. "They'll demand you be examined, tested. They'll want to understand how a human can do what you've done. And if they decide you're a threat," he didn't finish, didn't need to, "they'll kill me. Not if I have anything to say about it." He turned to face her fully. "Which is why you're not going. I'll present myself alone, tell them the bond was severed, that you've returned to human society. They have no authority over mortals if you're gone. They can't touch you, and leave you to face them alone?" "No, Alara, no." She grabbed his arms. "We're partners, remember? We face this together. This isn't a battle we can win with partnership and clever tricks." Kieran's voice rose. "The council represents 7 houses, each centuries old, each with armies at their command. They'll have laws and precedents and 100 ways to justify whatever they decide. You'll be walking into a room full of predators who see you as either a weapon to claim or a threat to eliminate. Then we convince them I'm neither. That I'm just a woman who loves." She stopped, the word catching in her throat. Kieran went very still. "Who loves what, Alara?" The truth sat on her tongue, terrifying and inevitable. In the 2 weeks since she'd chosen to stay, something had shifted between them. Conversations that lasted until dawn, his cool hand holding hers as they walked the moonlit gardens. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was sunlight he could never touch but couldn't stop yearning for. You, she whispered. Who loves you? The silence that followed was absolute. Kieran stared at her as if she'd spoken a language he'd forgotten existed. You can't, he said finally, his voice breaking. You can't love me, Alara. I'm dead. A monster. Everything warm and alive in you will wither beside what I am. That's not true. It is. He pulled away from her, putting distance between them. I've had 2 weeks to watch you heal. To see color return to your cheeks, to hear your laugh. You're alive, Alara. Brilliantly, beautifully alive. And I'm a corpse animated by stolen blood and dark magic. His hands clenched. You deserve someone who can give you a life. Children. Sunlit mornings. A normal death surrounded by grandchildren. Not centuries in the dark, beside a creature who will watch you age and die while remaining unchanged. What if I don't want normal? Alara's voice steadied. What if I want you? Exactly as you are? Then you're being foolish. Maybe. She moved closer, refusing to let him retreat. Or maybe, I'm being honest for the first time in my life. I was supposed to marry a lord who would have broken me slowly, turned me into a pretty, obedient ghost. Instead, I found a vampire who treats me like an equal, who values my mind as much as my blood, who's given me more freedom in 2 weeks than I had in 24 years of mortal life. Her hand found his cheek, and he leaned into the touch despite himself. You're not a monster, Kieran. You're the first real thing I've ever known. Alara. Her name came out as a plea. I love you, she said again, stronger this time. I know it's complicated and dangerous and probably doomed, but it's true. And I'm not taking it back. Kieran's control shattered. He pulled her against him with desperate strength, his face buried in her hair, his body shaking with emotion he'd locked away for decades. God help me, he breathed. I love you too. Have loved you since the moment you fell in front of that arrow, with no thought for yourself, since you argued with me about partnership and looked at my sister's flowers like they mattered. His arms tightened. I love you enough to let you go, if that's what keeps you safe. And I love you enough to stand beside you no matter what comes. Alara pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. So we go to the council together. We face them as bonded partners. And we make them understand that what we have isn't a threat, it's proof that their world and ours can coexist. And if they refuse, if they try to take you from me, then we fight. She touched his face, tracing the sharp lines of his cheekbones. Together. Like we always do. Kieran's laugh was shaky. You're the most stubborn, impossible woman I've ever encountered. Good thing you love impossible women. He kissed her then softly, reverently, like she was something precious he feared breaking. His lips were cool against hers, but the emotion behind the kiss burned. When they finally parted, his forehead rested against hers. If we do this, he said quietly, if we present ourselves to the council, there's no going back. They'll know about you, about us, about what you can do. You'll be tangled in vampire politics for the rest of your life. I'm already tangled. Might as well make it official. And if they offer you the turning as a solution, if they say the only way to resolve this is to make you vampire so you fall under their jurisdiction. Alara considered this, the turning death and rebirth as something immortal. No more sunlight, no more human warmth, but also no more aging, no more fear of being separated from Kieran by something as mundane as mortality. If they offer it, and you think it's the only way to keep us both safe. She took a breath. Then I'll consider it. But on my terms, not theirs. Kieran pulled her close again, and she felt him trembling. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. Outside, the sun rose higher, forcing Kieran toward day sleep. He held her until the last possible moment, then kissed her forehead with aching tenderness. Rest, he murmured. We have 3 nights to prepare, and when we face the council, I need you strong. We'll be ready, Alara promised. He left her in the library as dawn claimed him, descending to wherever he slept through the deadly hours of daylight. Alara watched him go, then turned to the window where snow still fell in lazy spirals. 3 nights until they faced the gathered vampire houses. 3 nights to prepare for a confrontation that would determine whether they could build a life together or whether the old laws would tear them apart. She thought of the letter, the summons, the threat beneath its formal language. And she smiled. Let the council come. Let them bring their laws and precedents and ancient fears. She'd faced down Cassius Draven, woken a manor's old magic, and bonded with a vampire through sheer stubborn will. She could face 7 houses. Especially with Kieran beside her. Mrs. Thorne found her hours later, still standing at the window, planning their strategy. You've got that look, the housekeeper said. What look? The one that says you're about to do something brave and stupid. Alara's smile widened. 3 nights, Mrs. Thorne. 3 nights to change everything. Or die trying. Or die trying. The old woman shook her head but couldn't quite hide her own smile. Well then, best start preparing. The Council of Houses doesn't suffer fools but they do respect strength. Then let's give them something worth respecting. Outside, in the forest, beyond the wards, ravens with red eyes watched and waited, carrying news back to their masters. The human and her vampire were coming. And the old world was about to meet something new.